Okay, well, we are fortunate during the 11:30 session to hear from Brad Griffith talking about micro-credentialing and how they are helping Oklahoma learners scale the peak.
Thank you very much, Glenay. And again, I know you all have seen me throughout this event so far, so it's really an honor to be able to talk to you on some subject matter that we've been working on very heavily lately at the State Regents. If we have not had the privilege of meeting before, I'm very sorry about that, but my name is Brad Griffith, and I serve as the Director of Online Learning Initiatives at the State Regents. I've been in this role since about October of 2019, and micro-credentialing has been a project that's been pretty consistently an undercurrent of my role and seems to be really taking off. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you all a little bit about where we're headed as a state and also help you to understand a little bit more of these concepts of digital badging and micro-credentials and how they can start to be incorporated from the course level all the way to the ground up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Just a little summary of what I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to talk about moving from idea to action, which is something that I've witnessed over the last year, particularly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and pushing us to think about new opportunities for what we're trying to do for our students in the system. I'm going to give you a basics of a badging and we'll do a little bit of a brainstorm. And again, thank you to Royal for that summary of what their interactions are with RSUTV students, because they are going to be my guinea pig of sorts today whenever we get to that conversation. I'm going to give you an overview, at least from my understanding of what the benefits are for the stakeholders that are involved in this. And you'll see that it's really a multifaceted effort, an all hands on deck effort at institutions. And we're also trying to create some collaborations and innovations across the system so that we can have some synthesis among the programs that are happening and really try to level up this effort, I think, again, for the benefit of our students. So once we get through all of that, we're going to have some time for questions for discussion. And I'm also putting some questions out there that include a little bit of a brainstorming prompt. So I'm hoping to get some ideas from you all in your individual roles, whether you're a faculty, instructional designer, any kind of other staff member on a campus, to see how you think you could incorporate these strategies into your own programs or area of employment, perhaps. So let's talk a little bit about history. During, again, COVID-19, we had two opportunities that came about to deal with micro-credentials for the very first time in digital badging as a system. Before that, though, we actually started in 2018 when the State Regents Online Task Force released their report on the future of higher education. They actually issued a mandate to us, or a highly enthusiastic recommendation, maybe, that the State Regents should provide a statewide framework and policies for institutions to develop micro degrees or micro credentials to meet workforce demand in real time. So again, this being in 2018, if you all have been paying attention, there's not been quite so much activity happening with micro degrees, micro credentials. When we got to 2020, though, things really flipped over within the higher education system. And I think that a lot of individuals, particularly our students, started questioning, what are we getting out of this experience of higher education? What is it that we can actually do along the way before we perhaps finish our degree in order to show the skills and competencies that we're gaining along the way? So the Regents actually had two opportunities to participate in some grant proposals. The first one was called Reimagining Workforce Preparation, and this one was issued by the United States Department of Education, a multi-million-dollar grant, again, a competitive program there, but the real goal was to kind of jumpstart the workforce competency and recognition opportunities for students that were languishing in the system, so to speak. So again, looking at how our higher education institutions, career and technical education entities can also create opportunities and short-term training opportunities to get people employed into these critical occupations, because again, there are openings out there, but individuals need to have skills, obviously, that qualify them for those positions. So within the context of this grant proposal, we worked very closely with the Department of Career and Technical Education in a really new and invigorating way. And our proposal was actually focused on digital badging and micro-credentials as a way to seamlessly connect some of the experiences that our students were having among both of the systems there. So unfortunately, that grant was not awarded to us. But again, we did kind of take some lessons learned through that process and move forward in our strategy. Coincidentally, during the same time, there was another grant opportunity issued by the United States Department of Labor, and they also strangely kind of pulled from the same pool of applicants. So they shared the consideration and evaluation of the grant, Certain applicants of the Reimagining Workforce Preparation were awarded Strengthening Community Colleges grants and vice versa. But this one, we had another group of community colleges who actually took the lead on this application, working in a similar arena actually with what we had proposed for the RWP grant of really ramping up these micro-credentials and digital badges as an opportunity to connect students to workforce opportunities out there. So where we are moving now is that we actually have a pilot that's about to begin this summer with funding that has been secured by the Online Consortium of Oklahoma, which we're going to talk about here just a little bit shortly. So moving gears just a little bit, let's talk about the basics of digital badges and micro-credentials. I would be willing to bet that many of you on this call are probably familiar with these concepts or have worked with them in some way. And if you don't think that you're familiar with them, chances are you probably interacted with them at some point along the way through professional development that you might have even taken yourself. So to start out with, let's talk about what's in a digital badge. So you can see over here on the right-hand side with that nice green image, all of the attendees for the Learning Innovation Summit will have an opportunity to earn a digital badge. So whenever you all take the evaluation that we sent you over email, which there will be another one coming after the next 2 weeks conclude, you will be issued a digital credential that contains a multitude of metadata, which is digitized information that allows for the cataloging of these kinds of digital badges. So in the case of digital badges, in this example, we would say perhaps we have an Oklahoma Learning Innovation Summit presenter. That would be the name of the badge. Criteria would be that they presented at the Oklahoma Learning Innovation Summit. So we would provide details there of what this event was, who the audience was, what any requirements were of being accepted to present on there that would document this individual and what they did. There's a URL that's usually associated with digital badges that provides any person that's viewing these an opportunity to go back to the source where this was issued and find out more information about the issuer or the specific entity or event that was responsible for issuing this badge. So this one is kind of creating that loop of verification where it's not up to an earner of a badge necessarily to communicate the validity and really what's inside of it. An individual can actually research this information just basically on what they have access to digitally through the web pages associated with this. Once again, issuing date, this can be variable and you can actually issue badges retroactively within any open badging system. So say, for example, with the Learning Innovation Summit, we'll issue all of the badges potentially May 1st. But we could say, this individual earned a badge on April 16th or April 17th specific to what their activities were. You can also, again, provide the issuing organization. This is really where the validity and the evidence kind of comes into play with these digital badges of saying this is the entity that is actually responsible for evaluating all of this and providing the verification that this earner has kind of earned this achievement here. Recipient information is very basic within digital badging systems. The very minimum that you have to have is an email address. So again, you can always program the name, you can program other fields of metadata in there associated with individuals. But again, for large scale events, if you're wanting to do something like this, all you really have to do is have an email address to get it connected to their account. Badges, in this case, for the presenters wouldn't expire, but in some cases, badges do need to expire. Say, for example, if there's a technical certification that's behind a badge being awarded, that is something that has to be renewed, you can make that badge expire so that it's kind of a timely badge, and then that would prompt that individual perhaps to go and renew their certification. Again, evidence URL, this is where, say, if we issued a presenter badge for the Learning Innovation Summit, we're going to have copies of the recordings available for these presentations, and we could actually provide a link to a recording for a presenter here so that an individual viewing their badge can actually view the session that was associated with them being able to earn it. The most important part of digital badges, in my personal opinion, is actually the tags that are associated with them. And we're really going to get into where the value of these come in shortly. But in the case of this kind of a session, for example, I would want to provide multiple tags that can allow for this digital badge to be indexed in the web environment. So that could be things like digital badge, micro-credential, OKLIS, presenter, online learning, workforce development, anything that would really be associated with the notion of the digital badge and allow it to be searched or discoverable within those terms. So Glenn, do we have a question in the chat? I see the little red dot there popping up.
It was a comment from Marla talking about how valuable this information is. They're looking at starting a badging program in their information literacy instruction program.
Very exciting. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. All right. So I presented to you kind of one side of the coin or one half of the coin here, and let's look at the greater construct of what you can do with these digital badges. Ultimately, what we're looking at is you're changing skills into digital currency. You're taking something that would normally require a verbal story, an artifact to be emailed perhaps, and you're making it easy for an individual to use their competencies and their achievement and have agency with those moving forward. So what you see over here on the right-hand side with the model that's been displayed here is actually our running model that we use for micro-credentials at the state regents. Again, you really kind of see that there's a funnel happening here, so to speak, and it really begins with professional development, coursework, prior learning assessment, military training, anything that a learner is doing really outside of or inside of formal and informal learning environments. As I've mentioned, this is a language of skills and competencies. So there needs to be an association with tangible outcomes here, measurable outcomes for the issuing of these badges and micro-credentials. There's that benefit, again, of having digitized portfolios and evidence. We talked about that with the badge, again, of being able to associate URLs with those, lead people back to other information, again, giving it the validity and kind of using the weight of the issuer on that credential. Market-driven program opportunities are really something that we're looking for students these days. So micro-credentials, again, are not meant to be necessarily an entire degree program that students need to prepare for years at a time. It could be, in the case of the model that we have right here, for example, that students are earning a couple of badges at a time. So maybe they earn one independent badge and then a couple other badges allow them to level up and then earn another badge. And all of those things combined can be associated together for a micro-credential. So micro-credentials, again, are a little bit bigger in nature than what you're looking at with an individual digital badge. Industry-driven standards are really guiding the development of some of these programs that we're looking at, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we go ahead. But just know that within the academic environment and really what your institutions are looking at in order to use this for students, they are trying to tap into what is needed right now in the industry. What is the real-time demand that we can actually give, recognition to our students and make them competitive for these opportunities? Those, again, include being short-term. Again, it's not meant to be taking necessarily the time that a 4-year degree would take or even a 2-year degree would take. These could be things that, students are already completing along with or outside of their collegiate experience, and being able to earn these credentials along the way, multiple of them, I would even argue. They are stackable. So as you see right here within this model with badge 2 and 3, those can be combined to earn a greater level badge. So there's kind of intermittent pathways that can occur within here with what you're seeing. There is a lot of program approval flexibility that's coming in here. Any individual or entity can actually start a digital badging program. The Council for Online Learning Excellence and OCO, the Online Consortium of Oklahoma, have been issuing these for quite some time now to faculty and staff through Badger. Badger is a free and open program that, again, anybody has access to. And one of the good things I think that we're trying to change with incorporating some of these things into the higher ed system is being flexible, allowing for new and emerging trends to be accounted for within programs that may not necessarily stick around in a permanent fashion. There are things that happen, on a daily basis that could perhaps disappear 1 or 2 years down the line. And we need to be okay with that. We need to be okay with adapting our programs and kind of changing focus to help our students adapt and, kind of be more effective and equipped for the workforce. The most important thing I think about micro-credentials as well is that they need to be aligned to institutions' missions. We have a lot of unique aspects of institutions in Oklahoma in the way that they're able to serve the unique communities where they actually sit geographically. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation that comes up over the next couple of years as this opportunity proliferates that really shows what our institutions are good at and how they can uniquely serve using the skills, competency, the faculty, the resources that they have to serve their own communities. Quality assurance and verification, again, is always a big part there. And again, we want to provide value beyond the degree and the academic transcript itself. So going into the brainstorm part here, again, you heard Royal talk all about RSU TV. the various functions that they have, and at the end, the description of what students, again, are involved with in their process, which is actually very extensive. So I did a little bit of searching online for RSU TV and noticed, for example, that they have a production assistant position that's posted out there. It's a student worker level position. So this is exactly the kind of individual that Royal was describing in the previous session, who does a lot of different things, which I've kind of bolded on here, which is not easy to see, but studio production, field shoots, editing, studio lighting, field lighting, set design and construction, social media, and web design for RSU TV. A little bit further down, you can see they operate TV studio equipment for live studio and field productions. They edit promotions, they download and transfer programming, they maintain the TV studio, they create and post social media and website content, along with a bunch of other various duties. So you can imagine the experience, and again, you didn't need me to even provide this to you based upon what Royal said earlier, of the great skills that come for students who are involved in this. But what would it look like potentially to try to take what's happening and what's written in a job description here and bring that into digital badges and micro credentials? So let's take a look at what I kind of see happening here. So again, the digital badges are really cool because you can customize them and brand them to whatever entity it is that is issuing them. So if you've ever seen these posted by your friends on LinkedIn, you'll notice that they generally have the logo of the issuer on there to give some recognition to that. So Royal, I apologize. I took some liberties here with some just simple graphic design to show some prototypes here. But it could start out for those individuals, again, that are coming into these new positions at RSU TV, where let's pretend that they get assigned to video editing as a first job or kind of a first skill that they need to tap into. Once the individual has demonstrated that competency, and they're kind of ready to move on to something else and learn new skills, they could be issued a video editor badge. And again, this is something that they have right away that they can share digitally. They can show, I am certified by RSU TV as a video editor. How great is that? Again, even providing somebody like Royal, who is a program manager and facilitating this networking opportunity with the affiliates throughout the state, he could do this digitally and they could automatically search for students who are earning this kind of a digital credential out there based upon the skills that they have. So again, we would maybe have one for social media strategists to account for those skills that students are developing, set design and construction, studio and field lighting. And again, within every one of these badges that you're seeing here, you would have a name, the criteria, URL, which could be like RSU TV's public website, the date that it was issued, RSU TV issuing it. And again, what I really love about this is the evidence that you can provide digitally. So Royal, for example, mentioned that they have recordings available on the RSU YouTube channel. So let's say that a student could attach a link to the video that they may have actually edited for broadcasting on RSU TV. Again, and that's real verification that an employer could use to see this student actually produced something that was used publicly. RSU TV has it on their website. They verified the badge, so I know that it's not just the student telling me, this is what I did when I was at RSU TV. It really closes that loop effectively. So what I see, again, within the micro-credential model potentially here is that the production assistant role in itself could be turned into a micro-credential issued by RSU TV, which would require the students by the end, in order to earn this, to gain these individual badges right here. You go back again to one of the things about this model that I really like. It's the fact that, again, whether or not a student is able to stick around, say, and earn the production assistant badge upon completion of all of these, they still gain the intermittent competencies along the way through these digital badges, which provides them agency. They can go out there, they can show these on their resume, they can share it on LinkedIn, and be competitive for jobs with these things happening. And again, if you think about, this moving into, what's actually in it for everybody here, the students, in this case, I think about all of those, the big population that we have out there with some college and no degree. How is it, and this is where I'm going to lead you towards getting to the end of this. How is it that you could break down the competencies that students gain, again, as an employee in your office, as a student in your program or your course, and start recognizing those and giving them the agency that they can actually take that and use it before they finish their degree? So let's talk about, again, what's in it for all of the stakeholders here. For institutions, they have a common language of employers, which is skills. They have the ability to serve communities more effectively, greater flexibility in creating short-term programs, which we're going to talk about some policy implications on this shortly. direct connections to employers possible with co-branded partnerships. Think about that, for example. If we have students that go into a common employer in Oklahoma and say they're completing internships or other job-related experiences with them, we could have them award digital badges in a co-branded capacity with an institution and certify that partnership digitally for that student. And again, I think it benefits both of the entities, the institution and the partner itself, by having that digital marketing out there. You know, we're in the middle of an influencer generation of students here. Students trust one another, you know, to recommend products and services, also schools perhaps to one another here. And this is one way where we can encourage that to happen. Lene, is there a question in the chat?
There is. We have a question asking about if this could be applicable to students doing video production on their own, TikTok, other places. Is this an avenue for that?
Absolutely, Glenn. So this is where, you know, say, for example, you have a studio art program. There are students out there that do a lot of independent artistry, and you could recognize that kind of evidence and honor that by the institution. And that's really where we start to talk about prior learning assessment here. That term has been tossed around for a number of years at institutions. You know, I started as an advisor in 2013 and it was talked about then. I still feel like it's a pretty nebulous thing and not really taken advantage of. And this is something that I think can really fill that gap. You know, institutions could use some of the evidence that students already have that they've produced. Again, if it meets the standards of the program, that's the big part about the evaluation here, is that there's somebody that's verifying this evidence is actually up to standards to award the credential. You know, there is absolutely a role for things like that to come into play here. That's a great question. So, and again, the opportunities for key populations, that's really where I'm focusing on those individuals with some college and no degree. I think that that's a really big opportunity.
Brad, we did have one more question that just popped up. They're asking about what are the safeguards against fraud? What keeps students from claiming badges that they might not have earned?
That's a great question to ask as well. So all of the digital badging platforms are backed by a technology called Open Badging 2.0. This technology was initially founded by Mozilla, I believe, but again, is the kind of language that sits behind all of these digital badges that are being awarded here. That technology is backed by blockchain. So blockchain is one of those that's a very secure interaction and type of data that really cannot be hacked necessarily. And again, that's what we're kind of using to communicate the skills here. So really, Bruce, kind of getting at your question directly, these systems are locked down by the institutions and have, you know, individual logins for the individuals that can actually issue the digital badges. So there's really no way that a student could even replicate this type of a web page because of the data that actually links back to the institution, the evidence that's provided there. You can actually, within any of these digital badges, if you look at one, there's a button on the top of every page that says verify this badge. So it will actually run the blockchain connections and detect that to make sure that the badge, again, is connected to the actual issuer that's listed on there. So it's one of the most secure things, I would say, arguably, for academic records concern. And you also see blockchain being adopted on a greater scale, even within the K-12 environment. So one of the things that I promise you, if you pay attention to this over the next 5 or 10 years, is that eventually we're going to be able to look at what students are completing in high school and perhaps even earlier. You know, if they take assessments, if they complete assignments, those things are being logged into blockchain. And in the Tulsa area, this is actually already underway in Tulsa Union Schools. They're partnering with ACE to do that. So digital badges are kind of one part of that blockchain credentialing initiative here. And I think that you're going to hear a lot more information about that come out again in the next 5 to 10 years. Hope that answers the question, not too off track. All right. And again, I know I'm running out of time here. So for students and earners, again, this is really where the biggest benefit lies. These are stable. So once a student completes a digital badge, there's generally a prompt there that says, hey, there's a next level that you can proceed to here, and here are instructions on how you can do that if you want to continue your learning pathway. Again, there's an opportunity for students to be recognized for both things that happen in the for-credit environment and the non-credit environment. So awarding credentials for things that may not necessarily be part of a for-credit experience. They allow students to demonstrate the current industry knowledge they have based upon, again, activities that they've completed, which really do provide that value to somebody on the receiving end of being able to verify those artifacts. One of the other biggest opportunities, and again, this is kind of segueing into the Credly system in particular, is that students can share these digital badges in a variety of platforms. I am actually seeing a ton of these things come out of the Masters of Business Analytics program at UCO because they have a partnership with SAS or SAS in their program. So they're issuing digital badges to their graduates to certify them for their tier 3 academic specialization, I believe. So I'm seeing these things pop up all over LinkedIn. I'm clicking on my students' badges, seeing, oh, this was awarded on this date by UCO. It's verified by SAS. How great that they've earned that credential. It can go on social media, digital resumes, e-portfolios, email signatures, and a variety of other hiring platforms. If we're talking about Credly in particular, including Indeed, Monster, ZipRecruiter, and all that good stuff. For employers, what the benefits are, they again have a language that's coming directly from higher education that's focused on skills. They have a database where they can search for qualified employees on the skills that they gain through these digital badges. So again, that's the benefit of providing the metadata on those tags that I was talking about earlier. And again, there's that verification element. They don't have to wonder, did a student forge this page? Are they providing me like a ghost URL or something here? No, there's an interaction there that can verify the blockchain credentials of that earner. And again, as I mentioned, just as the students can be attractive on LinkedIn, Monster, and Indeed and those platforms, employers can directly search for them and get connected with them based upon their current job postings out there. So a lot of real benefits beyond the traditional academic transcript for students. And it's interesting, you know, again, going back to the RSU TV example, because I just found this headline the other day, is Oklahoma the next Hollywood? How the state's film industry has thrived despite COVID-19. You know, you see announcements, for example, like Prairie Surf Studios in Oklahoma City, which took over the Cox Convention Center. They could identify potential employees or, you know, production assistants coming out of RSU and search for them and connect with them if they have this kind of credential. So you may be wondering, and I realize we're kind of running out of time here, so I'm going to try to breeze. Who else is doing this? So the American Council on Education supports digital badges and micro-credentials for military training and also for GED earners. So this is a potential where we could search for individuals with GEDs and try to recruit them into our pipeline. Information technology has been a big player within this field, which kind of makes sense considering that they would know how the blockchaining works and everything, and they kind of developed it. But you have Google, Microsoft, IBM, SAS, Oracle, CompTIA, and a myriad of other partners issuing these things. Quality Matters, which is a faculty professional development training offering, again, kind of deals with quality of online courses. They are now offering credentials to all participants in their workshops through Credly Acclaim. The International Advertising Bureau, U.S. Department of Defense, the Girl Scouts, National Retail Federation, obviously institutions of higher education, K-12, and career techs are going to be playing in this field as well. So prepare for the explosion. That's my advice to you. We are developing new policy, again, to allow for short-term approval of programs like this. This will likely be approved sometime this summer, which is really going to line up with a pilot that we have coming to use Credly Acclaim. So that is actually the digital badging platform that the state regents and the Online Consortium of Oklahoma are going to be using over the next year as a start. So we are going to be doing 10,000 earners across the system initially, which are going to be divided evenly among 27 institutions. So it'll be about 370 earners that are available initially to the institutions. And we have opted into what they call the Talent Directory add-on, which again allows that connectivity to platforms like LinkedIn, Indeed, et cetera. Again, what we really hope to do is expand beyond these traditional pathways in higher education. So the way that you can do that is by embedding micro-credentials in every single tier that you see here. So certificates can have micro-credentials just as much as a professional graduate program could have specific micro-credentials that break down the skills that earners gain. So the questions that I have to consider, and again, I apologize for rudely leaving 1 minute of discussion here, but which critical skills do your communities and employers need the most? How can you work with your colleges and universities to develop these kinds of micro-credential programs? What partnerships already exist that you can leverage in order to digitize? I guarantee you there are going to be numerous ones that we discover over the next year as we dig into this pilot. And then really, I think the most important question out of this is how can you better help students document their learning and achievement? There are numerous examples of this going on, such as the Student Transformative Learning Record at UCO, where we're heading down this pathway. But again, how is it that we can actually get these 4 program competencies and course competencies and objectives to start digitizing that and giving our students the agency? So thank you very much. And I am available for brainstorming anytime you would like to reach out and discuss this opportunity for your campus. And I promise you all that you're going to be hearing more information about this pilot as things kind of take off this summer. So happy to take any questions if there are any out there, Glenn.
I just want to say, Brad, doing a great job. And if I have a summer programs that I would like to implement, would that be enough time?
Absolutely, Josie. I have actually helped implement a digital badging program in a matter of a couple of days. If you have a program in place and your competencies are easily defined, it's very easy to be able to program a digital badge, create an image, and have it ready to go in a very short matter of time and start issuing.
Brad, we did have one question from Tracy on the chat asking about, is there a way to import external badges into Credly, referencing particularly some that are in Badger?
So that is actually one of the things that Credly restricts. And you heard me mention Badger earlier, and that anybody can create a digital badging program. Badger allows you or I to go out there and start our own digital badging program and issue these types of credentials. Credly, on the other hand, does not. Credly selectively partners with their institutions or other organizations based upon general standing, I think. And so, unfortunately, as I see it, I think it is kind of unfortunate. They do restrict the ability to import badges from other platforms into that. I will say that one of the reasons that the Regents and the team that was working on this selected Credly for the pilot is because of the number of existing partnerships that they have that we would be able to leverage. It goes far beyond what you're seeing with other companies like Badger and Accredible. So, you know, in order for us to, for example, to be able to tap into these military training databases or the students that are earning GEDs, you know, it really provides more advantages there. So what you may end up seeing at some institutions is that there could be instances of a digital badging initiative that's done through Credly Acclaim that's more focused on the academic programs that exist, and other initiatives being done through something like Badger, you know, where you would be able to recognize those other things that are being pulled in there. So yeah, it is a dynamic that I think we're going to have to flesh out a little bit, Tracy, as we go on through this pilot here, and kind of see what we can do with that, figure that out.